are Locked On Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Big Ten, everything you need to know about the Big Ten Conference every single weekday. Alongside our Friday co-host, Matt Sheehan of Locked On Spartans, I'm Nate Dickinson. We got a good show lined up for you today, leading into a good weekend of Big Ten football with Matt Spartans taking on the Michigan Wolverines in a top 10 matchup in East Lansing. We'll get to that in just a moment. Matt, this is going to be a big game this weekend for your team at home. And of course, it's Michigan, biggest game of the year for you. What are you feeling going into this matchup? As we talked about it the last couple of weeks going in, both teams have gotten to the point where this was the game, always circled on the schedule for a while now.
This is bad podcasting, but do you see this hairline, Nate? Do you see how scaled back this is? This is receding at a rapid rate, and it's because of the game this week. And also just the accumulative Michigan State games over time. It's always a stressful week, and this is the worst week of all time, man. I'm nervous, I'm angsty, just unpleasant to be around, and it's all because of what's going to be happening at noon on Saturday. I don't know what to expect. Michigan State has looked great so far this year, but they haven't really played anyone stellar. Michigan has looked great this year. They haven't played anyone really stellar. So I don't even know what to expect, man. I don't even know what to expect other than just tears either way, whether it be a loss or a win. Yeah, God, I'm not ready for this game, man.
Well, you'll get through it. I promise. We'll put you through the ringer here now. Isaiah, yesterday we talked all about Michigan and the Wolverines side. Now we'll get into the Spartans, Matt. What do you feel like is, again, something we asked Isaiah yesterday, the way that Michigan wants this game to go? What's the roadmap that you think Mel Tucker has in his head for optimal best winning probability?
Yeah, it's no doubt as simple as on the defense, make them one-dimensional. I mean, just stop the run, clog it up, keep them to 3.5 yards per carry or something like that. Because if we can get Cade McNamara throwing the ball, I don't think he's as bad as a lot of people are making out to be, but it's definitely the better option of them airing the ball out against you than, having their running game clicking. So, yeah, I mean, it's the most basic answer in the world, but stop the run. I mean, that's got to be it. And on the other side of the ball for offense, our offensive line just has to have a decent game. That I will not be greedy. I will not say they need to be world-class or elite. I just want them to be okay, because I feel like if you're okay, you give Peyton Thorne time in the pocket. You give time for the routes to develop with your all-star receivers and Jalen Naylor and Jaden Reed. And also you give Kenneth Walker a chance to dance around and do what he does best, which is make guys miss and break tackles. So I'll settle for average. So that's, and if our field goal kicker can do what he did 2 weeks ago against Indiana and make kicks, that'd be fine too. I'm just getting carried away here, but yeah.
I want to rewind.
I'm a broken man. I'm sorry, Nate. I can't. I'm not okay.
You're fine, man. You're okay. It's gonna be okay.
I'm not.
It's gonna be all right.
Okay. It's not.
I want to rewind a little bit back to something you said. You say that you'd rather have Michigan beat you in the air than on the ground. On the Michigan side, Isaiah mentioned you'd probably rather be able to pass against Michigan State than run. It probably goes easier with the way that Michigan State's run defense has been this season. If it ends up being that Cade McNamara has to beat you and that Michigan State defense does okay against Michigan running backs, how do you feel about that defensive backfield holding up against whatever it is, McCarthy, McNamara, anybody who's under center for Michigan?
I'm feeling okay about it. The stats on paper are not great. They give up a lot of yards to the air, Michigan State, that is. A lot of it, though, is they just keep the game in front of them. This is the cover 3 defense, and they give a little more cushion than they probably should. But teams don't have an issue moving the ball between the 20s. It's when they get inside that red zone, and this is the term of the year for Michigan State is bend, don't break. That's it. Once you get in the red zone, they grind you to a halt. They make you settle for field goals. So. Yeah, I think Michigan will get their yards one way or another, whether it be the air or the ground. But I think once it gets into the red zone, that's where I feel confident about the secondary, that they can batten down the hatches and not give them 15 yards worth of cushion, seemingly. So Yeah, I don't think the defensive backfield is as bad as a lot of people make it out to be, especially if like you're just looking at the numbers and what's on paper. So, and then that's not a dig to anyone. I mean, hey, I can't watch every single game either. So if I was on the outside looking into seeing, oh my God, MSU gives up so many yards in the air, like, yeah, I'd be critical of it too. But I don't think it's as bad as it really seems. Let me knock on wood here really quick. So thanks.
Isaiah and I agreed for whatever reason, maybe because it's just Michigan, that despite 2 undefeated teams, 2 top 10 teams, the stakes are just a little bit higher for the Wolverines and obviously what's going on over there. Talk a little bit just to what this means for the state of the Michigan State football program. Mel Tucker's been impressive and obviously has won over everybody over there, but this would be something else.
It would be, and it would be like a definitive mark that we are here and we are the premier program in the state, I would say. I don't think that's getting too carried away either. Like, listen, Michigan State beats Michigan last year. Like, that was awesome. It was great. But you do it 2 years in a row. You start your career 2-0 against the Wolverines, while Jim Harbaugh, now in year 7, would slip to, I think, be 3-4 against Michigan State. And then if you want to tie Ohio State in, you'd be 3-9 against your rivals. I mean, that would be a definitive, like, bang, we're here moment. And also for the rest of the season, too, like, you walk out of this game 8-0. You have Purdue, Maryland, Penn State, and Ohio State to end the season. Can you go like 10-2, finish there? If so, 10-2 in this year's Big Ten, that might get you to a New Year's Six Bowl. Hell, that might even get you to Pasadena. It might get you to a Rose Bowl if Ohio State takes that playoff spot and the Rose Bowl committee is looking for another Big Ten team. So, like, what an insane sentence to even say, though. I mean, based on where we were last year, just winning 2 games, the team looked horrible, and now all of a sudden, like, we're a win away from having realistic conversations about, oh my God, we're going to maybe the Rose Bowl if we take care of business. But that's getting way ahead of myself here. But I know what I'm doing. I know how ridiculous this is, but that's just where I am right now.
It's going to be a fun one to watch on Saturday. It's right now a 4-point favorite in favor of Michigan, but we'll get to all of that stuff with Matt here, as on a Friday, we'll, of course, talk about all the big lines that you need to know about going into the weekend and where you should be putting your money on. We'll get to those lines, brought to you by betonline.ag and everything, in just a minute. But, of course, had to break down Michigan State with Matt here with him on a Friday show. We'll be right back here with Matt Sheehan of Locked On Spartans with Locked On Big Ten. I'm Nate Dickinson. Today's show is brought to you in part by McDonald's. McDonald's has always had great food. I don't have to tell you about what McDonald's is. They're all over the place, but it's also always been a great place for friends and family to reconnect, reunite, and really do anything else. So head on over to McDonald's today. Be sure to not only get, again, great affordable food, exactly what you're looking for in minutes, but also be sure to make those memories that you've been making for a really, really long time at McDonald's. Again, McDonald's helping us get you locked on Big Ten today. I'm loving it. Welcome back into Locked On Big Ten. Everything you need to know about the conference every weekday. Thanks for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen every weekday morning. Once you're done here, be sure to make your second listen if you need to know Spartans. Locked On Spartans with Matt Sheehan, our Friday co-host here on the Big Ten Show, joining us to break down the lines and spreads and the props and everything else this weekend in the Big Ten. All lines and everything you'll hear is brought to you by betonline.ag. So if you want to play with us with these numbers, you can head on over to the site, use our promo code Locked On, get yourself some free money on top of whatever you put in on your first deposit. All right, Matt, that's all business. Let's get into, well, I guess more business, but the dollars and cents of things. Penn State and Ohio State is, after what was going to be a top 10 matchup last weekend, now the only matchup in the Big Ten that has a spread of double digits, 18.5 in favor of Ohio State. Part of that because we don't really know what's going on with the quarterback position at Penn State. We don't really know what's going on with a whole lot of stuff at Penn State after what happened a couple of weeks ago, or was that last week now? I forget who loses every week. It was Iowa. It was Iowa a couple of weeks ago, then Penn State. I think it was last week now. Nothing else has happened since. No, wait, there was a boring week in the middle of that, was there? Shoot. Now I'm
no. Last week was Illinois beating Penn State. Yes,
yes.
Even though
Illinois beating Penn
like
State. I thought it was going to be a boring week. It was not. Okay.
Yeah,
it was a boring week as far as none of the big teams were playing each other, really. All right.
Yeah.
Anywho, back to week 9. This game is at 18.5 points right now, Matt. It's entirely been flipped on its head. Over-unders at 61-2, which I don't, whatever. But 18.5 is right now a big number for a team that was, I mean, if this was a week ago, Penn State was ranked higher, right? They were ranked over Ohio
God,
State
I think
still?
they were. They had to have been.
They couldn't have been. They still had a loss. But yeah, it was going to be a top 10.
They did. I'm sorry. Yeah, the whole Iowa game. Yeah, I'm out of sorts right now. Still, but probably not an 18.5 point spread though. is what I would have figured. I am just very locked in on the over under though for this game. Like 18.5. Like that's too big of a spread, especially with like how good Penn State's defense is. And that's kind of where I look at this over under of 61 points. Like you talk about, you don't know what Penn State's going to do with their quarterback situation. Whatever they net out at, it's not a good option. Like we've seen what the backup can or rather cannot do against Iowa. Sean Clifford, he might as well just start throwing with his other arm if that's how it's going to be, like it was against Illinois. So with that said too, like Penn State's, like their defense, if they aren't just morally crushed yet by what happened last week, like I think they can hold the Buckeyes at bay. And by at bay, I mean just like a measly 42 points. I just don't know if Penn State can also contribute enough to get to the over 61. So like that's why I'm looking at under 61 is probably my best bet of the week here on the college football slate for Big Ten at least. So, but yeah, the 18.5, I just can't. I can't touch it. Can't touch it. So.
Yeah, 61's a lot. I mean, with Penn State as good as it is on that side of the football, you got to think even if, again, you said, if Ohio State puts up 40, which is, I think, I don't want to say nothing's an unreasonable amount of points for Ohio State to put up, but if Penn State's playing anything like what we think its defense is, that would be an unreasonable amount of points for even an Ohio State to put up on them with the way that Penn State plays the game, right? Even if Ohio State puts up 40, do you trust Penn State to put up 20? And if
I don't,
Ohio State puts up like, say, 30, which is, let's say, I guess, I don't know, that I guess I got to check, maybe 35 or 30, high 30s is probably where the Ohio State point total over under is at. But I don't
probably.
I'd have to look exactly at that. But even if you hold them to like just 30 points, Penn State's got to score 30 on their own. So I'm drilling home your point. Yeah, I think that's a solid bet, that under there at 61. But again, 18.5 just had to get out of the way. That's the only one that was really out of range as we continue to move along. The biggest game as far as like not just impact or not betting impact, but Big Ten impact in the West, Iowa's at Wisconsin. Those two teams still hold their own destiny in their hands in the Big Ten. One of them won't after losing this weekend. Obviously, Iowa the big favorite, but we talked about this with, I don't know who it was earlier this week, Kevin or Isaiah it was. I mean, with Wisconsin's defense and just, again, the way they play football, there's a lot more ways for this game to be close down the stretch than it being a blowout in my head. And right now, with the way the Big Ten's gone, close down the stretch might as well be just as good as an upset, if you ask me. Spreads at 3.5 points in favor of Wisconsin at home. What are you thinking about this matchup? An unranked team favored against the top 10 squad.
Yeah. I think I'm obsessed with the over-under of 36. I'm not going to play it, but just to see a number that low in the Big Ten, like, oh, that just makes sense, doesn't it? That is just fantastic. Nate, I'm going to make the same mistake 2 weeks in a row here. Last week, Purdue was 3.5 point underdogs at home against Wisconsin. I said that line reeks out loud, but I'm going to cut against it. I will get my head lopped off like the sucker that I am, and I did. Wisconsin blew the doors off of the Boilermakers. Now here we are again, an Iowa team that is 3.5 point underdogs as, like you said, a very highly ranked team. No way this could happen twice in a row, right? I can't get my head chopped off back-to-back weekend. So yeah, put the big old slice of cheese on the mousetrap. I'll take Iowa plus 3.5. Yeah, no question about it. I'm ready to die. Yep, let's go.
I think Iowa's a better team.
Yeah,
there's just so many ways that you see this game being within a field goal. Like if it's 2.5, it's a different story than when it's 3.5 entirely in this football game, you know? But right now it's at 3.5 in favor of Wisconsin. I'd go Iowa with the points too. Again, I think those are two just big reasons to take a team that there's a reason why this game's at the 36 over under, right? They're saying this thing's going to be something that's grind it out, gritty kind of classic Big Ten Wisconsin home game. Yeah. And obviously it's going to be fun to watch, but it's going to be a stressful game for whoever is betting any sort of it down that line. A line that kind of stuck out to me as one of the weird ones, or one that I thought could be a head scratcher for people looking at it, was Nebraska minus 7.5 against Purdue. Now, Cornhuskers are at home, but Purdue's an above 500 team. It still beat Iowa despite not looking good at plenty of times this season. Nebraska's not looked good just as much, if you ask me. I don't understand how this team comes in 7.5 point favorites. I know there was a time not too long ago when we thought Nebraska was the cream of the crop outside of the top tier in the Big Ten, but it's lost a lot of games since then.
Yeah, no, sure has. And listen, like, I know Purdue has a solid defense, but I think I still would take minus 7.5. However, I want to make my official play here over 52.5 for this one, because Nebraska, they love hitting the overs at home. Like, I think they've gone over in all their home games, except maybe just one. They're either undefeated with overs or they've only lost one at home. So over 52.5 is going to be my pick for this one. But God, yeah, like the 7.5, I don't know why the half just throws me off a little too much. I don't like that hook in there, but yeah, if I had to pick a side, I would go Nebraska 7.5. So I'm just going to continue my Scott Frost love fest for whatever reason, because that just takes me far in life, I suppose. I don't know.
Let's keep it moving here. Again, a few minutes left before we let you go, Matt. Throughout the rest of the games in the Big Ten, another one that's a little bit just kind of janky. Indiana's at Maryland. Maryland's a 5-point favorite. The over-under on BetOnline is 49.5 points. You've thrown your hands up in the air already for the people who only listen on the audio form. And again, you can subscribe on YouTube as well. What are you thinking about this game?
I'm thinking I'm never going to bet a Maryland game the entire season. I don't trust the Terrapins at all, ever. I don't care who they're playing. They could be playing Alabama. They could be playing their local middle school. I don't think I could ever bet Maryland. Just for laughs, though, I'll pick a side of the total here. I guess I'm just Mr. Totals this week. Over 49.5. I don't know. God, you know what? I'm sorry. I wish I could just give you a reason other than I think that, Maryland's such an up and down team that, hey, I think they're due for an up week because they've had back-to-back down weeks on their offense, I believe. And that's my only rationale right there, is that they're such a yo-yo team. It's time to go up, baby. Let's go. That's right. Take me all the way up, over 49.5.
BetOnline is your place to go for all of your sports betting needs. Everything that you could ever want, really, for football season. They got a whole lot of new things for you to try out there at the site, including just site that looks better. They got a whole new user interface up there for you to check out too. And really, all the lines, all the information for any sport you can find over at BetOnline. So head on over to the site, betonline.ag, enter in our promo code LOCKEDON for a 100% match on your first deposit into your account, and start betting away. It's your online sportsbook experts. Any line you hear on the show here at Locked On is going to be from BetOnline. So head on over to the site and bet with us. Start making some money on everything that we are talking about, down to the number. It's betonline.ag, your online sportsbook experts. Locked On Big Ten is brought to you today in part by Built Bar. Built Bar has all the flavors you need for all of your protein needs. It's all of the nutrition packed into the bar that you're used to. Protein, no carbs, no sugars, only the stuff you need, none of that stuff that you don't like, but all the flavor that you love. Again, all sorts of flavors over at BuiltBar.com. They're putting out new flavors like every few days this month. It's something to try and get you interested and get you over to the site. So head on over there, look at what they've got. And again, if you try out the service, use the code LOCKED15 for 15% off your order. Again, that's LOCKED15 at BuiltBar.com. Built Bar, the place to go for all of your protein needs. Everyone over here at Locked On loves the Built Bars that we get. Like, you just trust Maryland more than Indiana, right? I mean, you say up and down, like,
I don't trust anyone.
That's what it is. Indiana's
I don't trust anyone.
Down, down, down.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. I don't trust either of these teams. Like, this is, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, it was Maryland, Minnesota. And like, those are two of the top three teams of the Big Ten who, like, I don't trust. And that third team is like Indiana. I have no idea what to expect out of the Hoosiers. So like, this game is like, my money staying very far away from it. But if I had to, I'm in a weird metaphorical situation where I'm being held at gunpoint and had to bet this game, over 49.5, I guess. That's it. So that's my gun to head play of the week right there. That's it.
That was a stat I mentioned a couple of times yesterday. Indiana is one of only 2 teams, bottom 3 in the conference in both scoring offense and defense. You want to guess the other one?
Oh God, Purdue?
No.
Okay, shoot.
Think more of a disaster this season.
More of a disaster this season. Rutgers, Northwest,
compared to
Rutgers,
last season.
Rutgers,
Northwestern.
Got it. Shoot. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Dang.
Yep.
Poor Wildcats.
Speaking of Northwestern, the Wildcats are at home to face off against Minnesota, who, speaking of 7.5, are 7.5-point favorites on the road. Evanston has not really provided much of a home field advantage this season for Northwestern. It takes a lot to fill up that stadium, but Minnesota comes in with a whole lot of momentum. 1-3 in a row, looking like they might want to contend for that Big Ten West at the end of the season. They still got to play Iowa and Wisconsin. We, of course, get to those games later on in the year, but right now it looks like Minnesota, if it does what it has been doing at all, should have no problem against this Northwestern team. It just doesn't feel like the Wildcats have the bodies to compete.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like Northwestern just doesn't move the needle for me whatsoever. Nothing seems to be working for them this year. I thought it'd be a good cover spot for them last week against Michigan. Like Michigan with the classic overlook game to Michigan State. Northwestern, it typically is okay in October, but like still weren't even able to cover that spread of 23.5, I think. So no, I'm starting to fall in love with PJ Fleck again. I'm starting to believe in him. I'm a boat rower now, and so yeah, I'm going to take the Gophers minus 7.5. Fleck's got me believing again. That old handsome son of a gun. Yeah.
I guess if you're gonna go Northwestern, you should I guess go money line. If they've won, they
go for it.
Pretty much won straight up. I mean, they beat Rutgers by 14, ones against Ohio and Indiana State too, but their losses are big losses. When they compete, they've been able to close out games. So yeah, I wouldn't take 7.5, what I said on that game between Minnesota and Northwestern. Again, all lines provided by betonline.ag. Down the rest of the Big Ten, I'm trying to think. Rutgers, Illinois, Purdue, Nebraska, we already talked about. Is that the last game here? Rutgers, Illinois, we've already touched on. Of course, we got to get to, we'll skip Rutgers, Illinois. The big game of the weekend we haven't gotten to. Michigan State. Of course, we talked about it first segment, but not actually the 4-point favorite Michigan Wolverines against your Michigan State Spartans. It's, again, big noon game. Is it the big noon game? Is it going to be on Fox?
Yeah, it's
the big noon game.
Yeah, this incredible matchup is at
State.
noon. Yeah.
Everyone's going to be watching. Over under 51. Your Spartans come in as home dogs. I know that means that's where your money's going to be, but tell us more about the matchup.
So I'm not confident enough to bet like the points on either side, but however, I'm a little confident in like how this game might go, and I think I know Michigan's game plan better than like I think I'd even know Michigan State's. Just because like Michigan has been doing the same thing week in and week out, like just establish a run game, and I think that this will be a game where it'll be slow, grinded out, like they'll 3.9 yards per carry themselves down the field. Every drive will take seemingly 27 minutes off the clock, and I think it's just gonna be a really slow, grimy, classic Big Ten game right there too. Also, weather might be a factor here for this one. It is supposed to be a little windy with 50% chance of rain, so I don't think that's going to help the throwing game either. So as far as my best pick for this game, I'm going to have to go with under 51. That's kind of what I'm feeling here. But yeah, I'm taking the coward's way out, and I can't pick a side one way or another. I guess I'll just put on my green and white glasses and say MSU +4 if I absolutely had to, just because a home underdog sounds nice, and Michigan State is – very good at covering in this matchup. I think the last 12 years they are 10-2 against the spread in this matchup with a good handful of outright wins, of course. So yeah, that's if I had to pick a side, okay, Spartans +4, but my official bet will be under 51 for this one.
You like the over-unders a lot, Matt. I don't know if it's just, Big Ten provides a lot of fun over-unders to bet. I guess that's part of it, but you always bring in it. I don't always look that closely or think about them that closely, but like that 61, obviously that makes a lot of sense that those two teams aren't going to come anywhere close to that number. That Ohio State offense may be just mesmerizing some bookies down in Vegas or the odds makers again. All right. Well, Michigan State has obviously everyone's attention. I'm I was stalling trying to figure out where I wanted to go here.
Man,
it's a game I don't want to. I kind of just want to watch it. If I don't have a rooting interest, obviously, I think maybe if I did have more, I would have more of an opinion on what's actually going to happen. But right now, I just see two really good football teams who are playing easily the best competition that they've played so far. So, like, I'd take Michigan -4 if I was taking a team to put money on just because I think that there's a decent enough chance that this game is ending up whatever it is, not a one possession game at the end of it. And if I'm just going off football and what I've seen so far, I guess maybe Michigan, I trust a little bit more. But again, these two teams, I if they had played like one or two more really solid opponents on the way to this,
that'd be great
matchup. I feel like I'd know a lot more. But it's one of those, like, this. If this had been 2, if this had been 6, it's kind of all like, I get that spread's fair. Mm-hmm.
Sure.
All right, Matt. Well, the only other game, I guess we only are leaving out one, so maybe we should touch on it for a second. Illinois hosts Rutgers. Rutgers is -1.5. Over-unders at 42. Be quick.
Rutgers. Yeah, I believe in the Scarlet Knights. I have no idea why. Rutgers. Yep. No clue.
Both those teams actually have pulled off some. Illinois obviously last week, but Rutgers is winless in the Big Ten, so I don't know what I'm talking about. They beat Syracuse. That's what it was.
That's
Syracuse
right. There we go.
Kind of bad too, though. So what did they do? Oh, they lost by only a touchdown to Michigan. That's what it was. Okay.
Count that as a win. What the hell? Yeah. Mark it up.
All right. Well, that's probably the least watched game out of the weekend in the Big Ten, but I'm sure I'll have Illinois and Rutgers fans telling me all about how great it was throughout the weekend now that I just said that. Matt, thanks for coming on here on a Friday show, Locked On Big Ten. You'll be here every Friday. Hopefully you'll be happy next week. I don't want to see what the end result is if this is where you're at before the game, if that team ends up losing. Do I need to check in on you?
No, just assume that I'll be dead.
Okay.
Either with a win or a loss. Either way, I'll be delirious and probably not here for much longer. So, yep, I'll just combust spontaneously, I think. So,
all right. Well, again, Matt Sheehan, you can hear him every weekday on Locked On Spartans. He's going to have obviously a whole lot to say starting up the start of next week after this game on Saturday, and he'll be back on Friday with us again too. Thanks a lot, Matt, for joining. As always, we'll talk to you next week.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Nate. You're the man.
This has been Locked On Big Ten. We'll talk to you next week as well. Thanks for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen every day. He's at Sheehan_sports. At On Spartans is the podcast Twitter account. I'm at Nate with Sports. Big Ten Twitter the Locked On Big Ten Twitter is at Locked On Big Ten 10, not TEN. We'll talk to you next week. Hope you have a great weekend, and of